Oh, I thought I had this buried somewhere. This is gonna help. Yes, sir. Not sure if it's 1-to-1 though. I have this piece cut out. This is the back and the flap of the pouch. What I'm going to do is I'm going to skive this edge down all the way to, well, this line right here. And not going right here, but this, the edge. I'm going to do the same on this piece, except I'm going to go all the way around on this. So I'll have very thin edges, so I can sew them together, like so. Turn it right side out. I should have a very fine seam as a result. So the inside of the pouch will look like this, and then I can make a slit to make this whole space a pocket, if all goes well, ideally here. And then I'll be able to move on to sewing the strip of leather around here that gives the pouch volume, and then sew the front on. And we're gonna dig into some of that and put a couple little pouchlets on the front of this thing. Let's try this. Oh yeah! Ha ha! Alright, now that we're all blind, I don't know if there's a right way to do this, but I just kind of do a little thingy like this, and then we just start doing a little slicey slice action. And you just gotta be careful not to go too far, because then you're kind of screwed. You try to take it down, right down to the grain. Take all this fuzzy off. I just try to generally pick a certain width and stay around that width. And like I said, I don't know the right way to do this, so I just kind of do it. This blade is not terribly even. There's actually a... yeah, it's not very symmetrical, so sometimes I flip it. Even with that, there's a ways to go. It's, well, it's getting close. We're getting there almost. There's still a good fuzzy thickness to it. We have to go very thin because we want this to fold over very, very well. Last thing we want is a seam that's big and bulky. You want it to be even finer than this. Turning it inside out. I don't know how you show that. What am I doing? Oh goodness. That's really close, but that's about right. That's where I want to be, right there. A little steep, but that's where I want to be. I'll just follow that angle. Some clingers, get rid of that. Little edge dingleberry. And really, using this section is much more effective than all this, but I was staying back here just because it's been a little bit since I've used this and I didn't want to go too far too fast with it. So now that I'm feeling a little more comfy, I'm working back over toward the nose of the blade. How do we want to work this angle? We'll go here. And you can remove material a whole lot faster and easier there. But like I said, I wanted to be careful. Also, this thing is probably about due for a sharpening, but we're just going to keep going because it's cutting well enough for me. Ooh, that's real close. That might have been too close. Oh, we're safe, we're safe. Okay, that's good. Shoo. A little scary. And then, if you want to adjust some things, you can always do a little bit of this action and just gradually shave little bits, which is handy if you don't want to have to make a careful, deliberate cut and still make progress. Carefully adjust a thickness in a given area. So now we're down to the grain easily. A little thick right here. We'll take a little bit down. Just a little thing like that. And eventually we'll get all the way around. So now I can just go through and do a little of this, refine the thickness. I think this is just a sharper edge than this one. This one, I don't know, I'm just kind of getting a better result in general. Or at least I was in some areas. Yeah, that's okay too. It might just be different angles I'm trying to use of that. See, that's got me worried because it wants to sit up like that, but we'll be okay. But I'm trying to work on these corners rather than right here. It's working right there. You just kind of push stuff around, but if you got this corner, you know, doing things like this, now you've got that slicing action because everything's drawn across. Obvious to some, but not necessarily obvious to others. So, if you look right here, you might be able to see that that is not fuzzy at all, right in here, and a little spot right in here. That's where I want to get to. Still some fuzz here, there's definitely fuzz here, there's a little strip right there, fuzz right here, it gets a little clear right there. That's the level I want to get down to. It's probably really hard to tell. I can't really see with this light above the phone and all that, but I'm just gonna hope that you all can see that. I gotta take this whole edge down to that level, except for maybe the back, which I'm fine with leaving thicker because this is gonna have a stitch that runs across it that's going to fasten it to, you know, right up in here. And like I said, I just want these edges real thin so that everything can unfold and lay nice and flat, almost as if it's just one layer. Because if I sewed these two together and it was like this, and you go and you turn it inside out, you know, just imagine these edges curled under, you know, look how thick that's going to have to be. And then you're trying to compress that on the inside, so it's going to be a big balloon of a front flap if you have something like that going on. Not going to work, so you got to thin it. Alright, so here's another way. I'm choking up on the blade like this. So that way, when I come through and slice, I can let the edge of the blade guide my angle. I can just come through here, and that way I'm always pulling out on the leather as I make my slices and thin it. Well, you can either let that tip guide your angle, or you can just, you know, ground your hand. That way you're always pulling out, so you have good tension. You can make good slices. With this, I want to limit how deep I move into the center of this piece of leather. I want to keep that seam, that thinned area, close to that edge. And that's because, well, I'm going to have to rivet things into the front of this. I'm going to rivet things all around the edge, so I want to leave some thickness here. And granted, it's going to be, you know, the thin edge doubled up, but still, this is going to be doubled, right? It's actually not just going to be doubled, because I'm going to sew it and turn it inside out. So it's going to be possibly quadrupled, or very close to it, depending on how close to this edge I set my stitching. Which you don't want to go too close, because you don't want to compromise the strength of it. But I could probably get pretty close. So let's just take this edge for instance, right? So this is going to be folded in a little bit. I'm probably going to have to do a little slice or something there to relieve that curl. We'll see. It might work out. It might stretch. That would work too. And yeah, so this will curl under just a little bit too, and those will meet up. Yeah, I could probably get away with it. I could probably get away with it. Pretty close to the edge. And what I'm going to do is I'm also going to whip this edge, I think, for extra strength. So it's not just going to be a stitch running through, it's going to be stitch and whipped. So imagine I've got my 2 layers of leather. They're doubled up. They're like this. We're looking at the inside of the seam right now. They've got stitching going through it, and I've got that top edge whipped for strength. So we're looking at the cross section here. And then those peaks where my knuckles are right up here, that's what the outside is going to look at on a microscopic scale, if you throw it under a magnifying glass or whatever. When I take these and I put those on the edge, well, it's going to crimp them real flat, right? Suddenly everything's going to go real flat. But there's always going to be, wherever these are and where that whip stitch is going to be, there's going to be a little bead of a seam that's going to run here. If I can keep that very close to the edge, say right in this area, that would be absolutely perfect. That wouldn't cause any real disturbance. But the more material you leave on the inside there, well, now you're getting out into this area. Because if that seam ends up being under here, well, one, I'm going to end up piercing it with the rivets, which isn't going to hurt anything. This is going to be very permanent once this is all crimped on. But now I have all that material here. Where's it going to go? It's not hiding under this curve anymore of the brass. It's going to be under the flat, which means it's going to be crimped down fairly tight at least, because these need to be fastened reasonably tightly. And then that's going to leave me with lumps in between them. And these are pretty wide and that's a small gap, so it's probably not going to be much of a lump, but once you get to corners where things have to be spaced out a little more, it might actually start to show, and I don't know, it could make for a weird effect. And then you got this sort of little area. This is actually something I'm going to change, because you have all of this material here that just flops around. What I'm going to do on this version, I'm going to make a slit, and this is going to run out the front actually. So I think for the sake of punching, I'm going to lay these out this way and travel around with the punch, because this is full thickness, right? This is actually a slope going away on all of these. So if I do it the other way, and I try to put these up against each other, well, now I've got these both sides kind of sloped, and it's a little harder to line it all up. Things don't want to play as nicely. Can't really tell what's going on with the bottom. This seems like it flops, it covers over everything. Since it's been thinned, this edge is a little stretchier. But if I do this, now I've got flat against flat, it's a little easier to feel where the edges are and see what's going on. Yeah, there we go. So if I put the main one on top, so leave this panel right here, put this on top, it's probably partially a slight size difference from me cutting these 2 pieces out, because it's not like I have a clicker press or anything where I'm cutting these out by hand, so there are going to be some things about them, but I can see everything's lining up, which is good. I want that, so I can confidently travel around with the punch and know that my holes are transferring through both layers the same way where they need to be, instead of, if I'm coming from the other side and they're like this, oops, now I missed an edge, and now we're going to have to go back and do some guesswork. And it's stretchy. You can work with it, but why not be more accurate this way? So I've got this prepped now. I need to run perforations through here, and that's going to translate somewhere on here. We'll have to figure that out when we get there. And this is me getting ahead of myself. I've only got one of these under my belt. gonna make it a little tricky to sew in there because I kind of closed everything up beforehand. But at the same time, I had a little bit of strap length adjustment I needed to do because I compared against the original. So, is it just the cost of how things are going to be? That's what it's going to be for now. So, got those tacking it down for the moment. I'll have to get in there and stamp in some perforations this way, and then figure out how to do it a little just across there at the bottom. Right here across the top was the easiest of it, but at least now it's in place and not going anywhere. And this is why you check how all of your holes line up. So I'm just counting the stitches. Wasn't sure if I built in some excess in my pattern, because it's been a while. Turns out I did. So I have 3 spare holes here, so I'm going to slice right down there. You can see this is how this one lines up. It's going to be just covered once this gets stitched down. It's going to be a little bit of overlap. That's going to get tucked in just like it is there. So, got to make room for that here. Snip, snip. I mean, ideally you wouldn't have to do all this stitch counting nonsense, but because it's been a while and I didn't do all of that work when I first designed that, it's just something I got to do. Because I didn't put all that time and math in to be like, okay, well, we need to start on this line and this many. I didn't have any of these tools, so I'm just poking holes by hand. So I didn't have like a concept of, oh, let's measure. It's gonna be 4 millimeters spaced and stamp, 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 stamp. So at least I can make some of those calls now, and I can update the pattern, write some of that stuff on there, make some notes, just so I know for future reference if I ever want to do this again. Okay, return of this paper. So what I'm trying to figure out now is this outside pouch. What size of a piece of leather do I need, and what shape does it need to be? So I'm starting here, and I just have this tacked into place with these. So I have my center lightly marked right there, and my center marked here. So just make those meet. Oh, come on. There we go. Oh, right there. And we're looking at pouch openings about yay big. 3 would look cool. There are a lot of cool looking three pouchlet pouches like this. But honestly, like with this particular size, it doesn't really make much sense to divide this into 3s, because then it's impossible to get your fingers into the pocket to retrieve whatever you threw in there. And even 2 is kind of pushing it a little bit. I can get, I can get 4 fingers in here. I just have to hold this down with, so I can reach down there and grab coins or dice or whatever go in there. And that will be no problem. I'm probably going to extend this. This is just under 11 inches. So I'm thinking I might bump that out to 12, 12 and a half, 13, and call that good. So that's where that's at.